Robust International PTE, ICAI Campus Interview Preparation. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a dedicated preparation guide for robust international PTE campus and off-campus interviews. Robust International PTE Limited is a multinational agri-commodities trading and processing company headquartered in Singapore, specializing in sourcing and exporting products like cashew nuts, sesame seeds, and spices from origins primarily in Africa. All these are expected questions which may be asked in interview. Let's begin. How would you evaluate the financial risks involved in global commodity trading operations? Sample answer. I begin by identifying exposure to price volatility, foreign exchange movements, credit risk of counterparties, and logistics-related uncertainties. Then, I analyze the company's hedging structures, contract terms, and dependence on specific geographies. For each risk, I link it to its financial impact on margins and working capital. While answering, include points like identifying key commodity risks, reviewing hedges, and analyzing margin impact. What steps would you take to verify the accuracy of purchase contracts for international shipments? Sample answer. I check contract quantity, grade specifications, pricing terms, Incoterms, delivery obligations, and credit arrangements. Then I reconcile contract details with the PO, supplier confirmation, and shipment documents. International contracts must align with logistics and pricing clauses. While answering, include points like reconciling terms, checking Incoterms, and validating pricing clauses. Scenario. You identify inconsistencies between shipment documents and ERP entries. How would you investigate? Sample answer. I compare vessel details, container numbers, BL dates, invoice quantities, and packing list weights with ERP entries. I check whether documents were updated late or whether manual overrides occurred. If mismatch persists, I confirm with logistics teams and forwarders. While answering, include points like reconciling all documents, checking posting delays, and verifying with logistics. How do you assess the effectiveness of internal controls in a procurement-driven organization? Sample answer. I review vendor onboarding, approval workflows, three-way matching controls, and segregation of duties. I check contract approval rights, pricing validations, and GRN processes. Strong procurement controls reduce cost leakage and fraud risk. While answering, include points like evaluating approval flows, testing three-way match, and reviewing vendor controls. What procedures do you follow to validate commodity pricing linked to international indices? Sample answer. I verify index sources like LME, Platts, or regional benchmarks. I check timing of price capture and adjustments like premiums, freight, or discounts. Then I match contract pricing formulas with actual invoice calculations. While answering, include points like validating index rates, checking timing, and confirming formula accuracy. Scenario. A supplier claims a price revision after shipment. How do you validate the claim? Sample answer. I check the contract escalation clause, review index movement on the pricing date, and confirm whether shipment terms allowed price adjustments. If shipment was already loaded, I verify whether late pricing was contractually agreed. While answering, include points like checking escalation terms, reviewing index dates, and verifying contractual rights. How would you audit vendor onboarding and KYC processes for international suppliers? Sample answer. I verify legal documents, registration certificates, sanctions screening, and background checks. I confirm banking details and validate KYC approvals. International trading needs strict anti-fraud controls. While answering, include points like verifying documentation, checking sanctions lists, and ensuring approval controls. What steps would you take to verify import-export compliance and documentation accuracy? Sample answer. I review shipping bills, bills of entry, certificates of origin, customs declarations, and packing lists. I verify that HS codes, quantities, and values match contract terms. Compliance with customs rules is essential to avoid penalties. While answering, include points like checking documentation, validating HS codes, and confirming customs compliance. Scenario: freight charges appear abnormally high for a particular shipment. How do you analyze it? Sample answer: I compare invoiced freight with contract terms, route distance, container type, and market freight trends. I check whether demurrage, detention, or surcharges were added. I also validate freight calculators or forwarder quotes. While answering, include points like comparing with market rates, checking surcharges, and reviewing route details. How do you assess foreign exchange exposure and hedging effectiveness for cross-border trade? Sample answer: I map payable and receivable currencies, analyze timing differences, and identify net open positions. Then, I review hedge instruments like forwards or options. I evaluate whether hedges reduce currency volatility and align with underlying transactions. While answering, include points like mapping exposures, reviewing hedges, and analyzing volatility reduction. What procedures would you follow to review contract management and fulfillment timelines? Sample answer: I analyze contract milestones, shipment schedules, and payment timelines. I check status tracking in ERP and compare planned versus actual deliveries. Strong contract management ensures timely revenue and cash flow. While answering, include points like checking milestones, validating schedules, and analyzing delays. Scenario: stock-in-transit records do not reconcile with logistics updates. How do you investigate? Sample answer: I verify vessel ETAs, forwarder confirmations, and container tracking reports. I compare GRN postings with shipment dates. If gaps remain, I check manual adjustments or incorrect movement types in ERP. While answering, include points like checking logistics data, reconciling GRNs, and validating ERP entries. How do you evaluate working capital efficiency in a trading and distribution business? Sample answer: I review receivable days, payable days, and inventory holding. I analyze how shipment cycles affect cash flow. I test whether credit terms with customers and suppliers align with industry norms. Trading businesses rely heavily on fast turnover. While answering, include points like analyzing cycles, reviewing terms, and assessing cash conversion speed. What checks do you perform to validate quality inspection reports shared by third-party inspectors? Sample answer: I compare inspection results with contract specifications. I examine sampling procedures, inspector credentials, and photo or video evidence. If inconsistencies arise, I request retesting or counter-inspection. While answering, include points like matching specs, validating sampling, and reviewing inspector reliability. Scenario: a customer disputes the quantity received. What documentation and analysis would you perform? Sample answer: I verify BL quantities, weighbridge slips, container seal numbers, and discharge port inspection reports. I compare loading port weights with destination port weights to identify transit loss. I then reconcile logistics documents with invoices. While answering, include points like checking BL and weights, verifying seals, and reconciling documents. How do you review commodity inventory valuation when prices are highly volatile? Sample answer: I test valuation using weighted average or FIFO as per policy. I check NRV against current market indices. For hedged inventory, I validate hedge adjustments. Volatility means valuations must be updated frequently. While answering, include points like applying correct valuation methods, testing NRV, and reviewing hedge adjustments. What procedures would you follow to assess credit risk of counterparties in global trading? Sample answer: I review financial statements, credit ratings, payment history, and trade references. I assess country risk exposure and currency controls. Then, I set exposure limits aligned with risk appetite. While answering, include points like reviewing financial strength, checking payment history, and setting exposure limits. Scenario: a customer delays payment beyond agreed terms. How would you assess financial and operational impact? Sample answer: I analyze outstanding aging, interest or penalty clauses, and cash flow impact. I evaluate whether shipments should pause until payment clears. I also reassess the customer's creditworthiness. While answering, include points like evaluating aging, reviewing penalties, and assessing credit risk. How do you ensure compliance with sanctions, embargoes, and international trade regulations? Sample answer: I screen suppliers and customers against global sanctions lists like OFAC, EU, and UN. I validate end-use certificates and ensure no restricted goods or regions are involved. Compliance must be continuous and system-driven. What steps do you take to validate GST, customs duties, or VAT calculations for cross-border transactions? Sample answer: I check HS codes, customs valuation rules, and taxability based on import or export jurisdiction. I validate duty exemptions, preferential rates, and documentation support. Tax accuracy avoids penalties and preserves margins. While answering, include points like validating HS codes, checking valuations, and confirming exemptions. Here is part 2. Questions 21 to 40, in the same teacher style, TTS-friendly, compact yet complete format. End. Scenario: customs duty assessments differ from internal calculations. How do you reconcile? Sample answer: I start by comparing the customs assessed value with internal valuation sheets, checking HS codes, currency conversions, freight additions, and insurance loading. Then I review whether any preferential duty benefits or exemptions were missed. If the difference still persists, I verify whether customs applied a different valuation method, like transaction value versus computed value. While answering, include points like checking valuation components, verifying HS codes, and analyzing duty exemptions. How do you investigate potential fraud indicators in procurement or logistics cycles? Sample answer: I analyze abnormal price deviations, repeated vendor patterns, sudden changes in freight routes, and mismatches between physical and ERP records. I check for duplicate invoices, hidden charges, or contract deviations. Fraud indicators require tracing transactions end-to-end with independent documents. While answering, include points like reviewing anomalies, reconciling physical records, and checking contract compliance. What checks do you perform to validate the completeness of revenue from export contracts? Sample answer: I reconcile shipping bills, invoices, BL documents, and export realization certificates. I check whether all shipments under active contracts were invoiced. I also review cutoff around month end to ensure no shipment is missed. While answering, include points like reconciling export documents, checking completeness, and validating cutoff. Scenario: a supplier consistently misses deadlines. How would you evaluate contractual and financial risks? Sample answer: I review contract penalty clauses, delivery schedules, and historical performance. I analyze whether delays impact customer commitments or working capital. If risks escalate, I reassess the supplier's reliability and consider alternative sourcing. While answering, include points like reviewing performance history, assessing financial impact, and checking penalty clauses. How do you audit freight forwarder bills and logistics invoices for accuracy? Sample answer: I match container numbers, voyage details, transit distance, and agreed freight rates with the invoice. I check whether demurrage, detention, and surcharges align with proof. I reconcile charges with quotes and forwarder contracts. While answering, include points like matching invoice details, validating surcharges, and reviewing contract rates. What procedures do you follow to review risk management frameworks in a commodity-focused business? Sample answer. I assess identification of commodity, FX, credit, and logistics risks. I review hedging policies, stop-loss mechanisms, and VAR limits. I examine whether risk dashboards provide timely information to management. While answering, include points like reviewing risk categories, checking hedge policies, and validating reporting quality. Scenario: hedge effectiveness testing shows discrepancies. How do you investigate? Sample answer. I test whether the hedge relationship was correctly documented and whether exposure and hedge volumes match. I verify market data used for testing and recalculate effectiveness using alternate methods. Discrepancies often arise from data timing or incorrect mapping. While answering, include points like checking documentation, verifying market data, and recalculating effectiveness. 0. How do you evaluate the performance of distribution hubs and warehousing operations? Sample answer. I review warehouse turnaround time, storage cost per ton, utilization rates, and dispatch accuracy. I analyze shrinkage, damages, and reconciliation efficiency. Strong distribution hubs drive customer service and margin stability. While answering, include points like assessing utilization, checking turnaround time, and analyzing shrinkage. What steps would you take to ensure financial reporting reflects accurate landed cost calculations? Sample answer. I verify freight, duty, insurance, port charges, and inland logistics. I ensure all incidental costs are captured before inventory valuation. I reconcile landed cost sheets with invoices and customs documents. While answering, include points like verifying cost elements, checking documentation, and reconciling with ERP. Scenario: you observe inconsistent weight or measurement data between source and destination ports. How do you analyze? Sample answer. I compare weighbridge reports, draft surveys, and container seal integrity. I analyze moisture loss, handling losses, and measurement standards between ports. If mismatch is large, I investigate possible pilferage or misreporting. While answering, include points like comparing surveys, checking losses, and reviewing seal integrity. How do you audit supplier performance and procurement efficiency in high-volume trading operations? Sample answer. I analyze on-time delivery metrics, quality rejection rates, cost competitiveness, and adherence to contract terms. I review procurement cycle time and tendering transparency. Supplier evaluation must be both quantitative and qualitative. While answering, include points like assessing delivery metrics, checking quality trends, and reviewing procurement discipline. Ending. What checks do you perform when reviewing customer pricing models across different geographies? Sample answer. I review market benchmarks, freight parity, local taxes, and margin expectations. I test price logic against competitor pricing and region-wise demand conditions. Pricing must reflect both cost to serve and commercial strategy. While answering, include points like validating benchmarks, checking margin logic, and linking price to geography. Scenario: a large debit note is raised against a shipment. How would you validate and justify it? Sample answer. I check supporting documents such as quality reports, weight shortages, delay penalties, or pricing differences. I reconcile debit note amounts with contractual clauses. If justified, I communicate the rationale with clear documentation. While answering, include points like reviewing supporting evidence, checking contract terms, and reconciling amounts. How do you review Treasury operations for a company dealing in multiple currencies? Sample answer. I examine forex positions, borrowing arrangements, short-term investments, and hedging practices. I test accuracy of FX gain and loss calculations and verify bank reconciliations. Treasury operations must maintain liquidity without excessive risk. While answering, include points like analyzing positions, checking hedge logic, and validating FX calculations. What procedures do you follow to evaluate sustainability and ESG reporting for global trading operations? Sample answer. I review disclosures on emissions, responsible sourcing, waste management, and labor standards. I verify whether sustainability metrics are supported by ERP data and third-party audits. ESG accuracy affects brand and regulatory compliance. While answering, include points like validating disclosures, checking data traceability, and reviewing audit support. Scenario. You detect unauthorized changes in master data within the ERP. What actions do you take? Sample answer. I review user access logs, identify who made the changes, and validate whether proper workflow approvals were followed. I reverse incorrect entries and strengthen access controls. Master data integrity is critical for trading decisions. While answering, include points like tracing user logs, reviewing approvals, and correcting entries. How do you assess logistics costs and identify opportunities for optimization? Sample answer. I analyze freight per ton, route efficiency, truck turnaround time, and utilization levels. I compare forwarder rates with benchmark data and evaluate multimodal options. Cost optimization often lies in planning and consolidation. While answering, include points like analyzing unit logistics cost, reviewing route efficiency, and benchmarking forwarder rates. What steps do you take to evaluate internal audit effectiveness in a fast-paced trading environment? Sample answer. I check audit coverage, audit cycle frequency, closure of findings, and alignment with key trading risks like pricing, logistics, and FX. I review whether internal audit identifies root causes or just symptoms. While answering, include points like assessing coverage, checking closure strength, and reviewing depth of insights. Scenario. You identify a mismatch between financial margins and operational reports. How would you approach this? Sample answer. I reconcile sales quantities, pricing, discounts, and cost assumptions. I validate inventory movements and freight allocation. If differences persist, I compare operational data sources with finance logic to identify mapping errors. While answering, include points like reconciling pricing and volumes, checking cost allocations, and validating data mapping. How do you manage audit tasks across multiple shipments, contracts, and geographies while ensuring accuracy and timelines? Sample answer. I use a structured audit plan that tracks deadlines for each shipment or contract. I prioritize based on value, risk, and shipment timing. I maintain continuous communication with logistics, procurement, and finance teams. Strong planning ensures accuracy even in dynamic trading operations. While answering, include points like using structured planning, prioritizing by risk, and coordinating with teams. Thank you for watching, and if you liked our video, kindly press the like button and leave us a comment. This will help us reach a wider audience.